and welcome to this week's Stalking the Wild Autoharp. And I'm excited because I'm finally going to start talking about playing blues on the Autoharp. And this is something that I kind of made a name for myself with in playing Autoharp, in playing in Autoharp circles. And after a while, I started also doing it on the Prism Autoharp, which is a different kind of setup. And people started thinking that you have to have a Prism Autoharp to play blues the way I do. And that is not the case. I started playing blues on a straight chromatic instrument, and that's what this is. This is a straight chromatic Autoharp. Nothing fancy about it. I mean, well, it's a Daigle, and that's pretty fancy, but it's a standard tuned chromatic Autoharp, and you can do all kinds of great blues licks. So I want to start showing you how to do that. And I want to start by saying that in melodic style Autoharp playing, whether you're playing a chromatic or you're playing a diatonic, you very frequently will find yourself using one finger per chord. And your typical song has 3 chords, maybe 4 chords, and so you use a different finger for every chord in the song. Okay? With blues, it's sort of different because a typical blues song has 3 chords, a 1, a 4, and a 5. But in blues, you sometimes use 4 or 5 or 6 chord bars to make one chord. And you can't, obviously, you don't use those all at the same time, but you use, you go through a series of chords to create a melody that all happens on the same basic chord in the song. Let me show you what I mean. A typical blues song uses a 1 chord. In this case, I'm using G, okay? So G is my 1 chord, or G7. All right, so now already I've used 2 bars for that 1 chord, G and G7. All right, and then it uses a 4 chord, which in this case would be C, and C7. So now I'm using 4 bars in my song. I'm using, but only 2 chords. I've got the 1 chord, 1, 1, 7, 4, 4, 7. So that's 4 different chord bars on 2 chords, okay? The G chord and the C chord, all right? Now, the 5 chord in the key of G is a D, okay? So we use D and D7 for the D chord, all right? So now we've got 6 chord bars to cover 3 chords. The 1 chord, 1 and 1, 7, 4 and 4, 7, and 5 and 5, 7, all right? So we're using 6 chord bars to bring out 3 chords, all right? But that's only the beginning, okay? There's a lot more. But right now I want to stick with those 6 chords and show you a little blues scale that you can do. And to do this, what I'm going to have you do is use your 1 chord, G, and your 4, 7, okay, which is C7, okay? And you're going to toggle between them like this, okay? This is my 1 chord, and this is my 4/7 chord. Now, you might have a different arrangement of buttons, and it doesn't matter how your buttons are arranged so much as that you have the chromatic Autoharp and you have the chords on your harp somewhere, okay? So you will have to work out the pattern of your left hand based on your chord bar arrangement, okay? And I use the Brian Bowers arrangement on my harps, all right? So I'm using the 1 and the 4/7, okay? And I'm toggling back and forth like this, all right? Now when I play, I'm toggling back and forth, and I'm just going to pluck and let you hear the scale. Or if I pinch, all right? Now, I will do that when the rhythm chord is a G. All right? So your accompanist is going on the G chord, all right, and the G7, all right? And then your accompanist changes to a C chord. That's the 4, okay? So when that happens, instead of using a different finger, what I want you to do, okay, this is what you were doing on the 1 chord, on the G chord. You were doing G and C7. You were using 1 and 4/7 and toggling between those while the harmony chord was on G. Now it changes to C. Rather than doing this and grabbing your C there, which is your 4 chord, I want you to shift both fingers over. Okay, so this one is now on C, and this one is now on F7. Okay, so it's the 4/7 of the C chord. So you use the 4/7 of the G chord here, the C7. All right, you use G and C7. Then when you shift over here, you keep your fingers in the same position, shift them over, and now you've got C and F7. All right, so you've got the C and its 4/7 chord, which is F7. Okay, so now you've got this. On the 1 chord, then it changes to the 4 chord. You shift both fingers over. And then go back to the 1 chord, which is your G and C7. And then back to the 4 chord. And then back to the 1 chord. Now, do the same thing, but go to the 5 chord. So you're going to shift both fingers over the other direction and go to the D and G7. Okay? So D is the 5 chord, and the 4/7 of the D is the C7, which, as you remember, is your 1/7 original position. So you're shifting up and down. You start here, and then shift here, and then back. And then to do the 5 chord, you shift down like this, and then back. Okay, so here's your 1, 4, and 5 chords. Okay, and sometimes you have to skip over the 1 chord to get to the 5 chord. You go from the 4 chord to the 5 chord. You have to skip over a chord. That's the way you play the blues, because you get these clusters of chords that all work on the same harmony chord, the 1 chord, for example. And then when the chord changes to the 4 chord, you shift your whole hand over to keep the cluster the same, and you play the same patterns, shift it over to the 4 chord, and then you shift back to the 1 and then up to the 5. And you do that by shifting your whole hand and moving that whole cluster of chords. All right. So to do that, here's what it sounds like. I'm just using the G with the C7. I'm using the C with the F7, and I'm using the D with the G7. All right. So we go C. We go G. C, G, D, C, G, 5, D, G. All right, so that's the beginning of the blues, and I have much more to add to that. Next week we're going to throw in a minor chord to that same cluster of chords so that we get this. So we can go. And sort of get some boogie woogie going there, okay? So I'll teach you that next week, okay? So thanks for tuning in to Stalking the Wild Autoharp. This is where chromatic autoharp really comes into its own. So grab that chromatic autoharp and give this a try. My website is halweeks.com. You can go there and you can find out more about doing private lessons with me online. It's cost effective and a really great way to pick up some extra chops for your autoharp playing. And until next week on Stalking the Wild Autoharp, I'm Hal Weeks, and we'll see you. Bye-bye.